See, some people are still arriving, but as we know, if we don't start it, we'll never get started. So please join me in welcoming Professor Bernie Brooks. Just to tell you a little bit about him, he's a professor in the School of Mathematical Sciences and a member of the Center for Applied and Computational Mathematics at RIT. Bernie is a founding fellow in the Consortium for Mathematical Methods in Counterterrorism as well. He's a Eisenhart Award winner for outstanding teaching in 2011, 2012, and a recent participant in our GOLD program that's guided online development right here in this very room. And I know he'll tell you a little bit about what it was like to participate in the GOLD program as he tells you whether teaching math online is possible. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bernard Brooks.
Thank you. And thanks for coming out in the rain. Appreciate that. Yeah, the GOLD program was, I'd always intended to try and put something online. And actually for years, right? Because you would meet me and say, when are you going to do that?
Let's do it.
Yeah, and I'd say, yes, I intend to. But the GOLD program was the catalyst to actually make this thing happen. And people familiar with the GOLD program, emails go around. It's basically like we met in here discussing how to make an online class. Another motivating factor was there was some stipend in it. There was the best part about it, there was a lot of help to make these things. I'll show you videos that I made, but everything you see was done with a lot of help from everybody here. And before I started, I was, well, as it says there, I was very skeptical. I understood how, in fact, I sort of overheard somebody's taken organizational behavior online at the College of Business.
I took an operations management class.
Oh, okay. I took one of those online through the College of Business, and it was all right.
Right here you did.
Yes, and so I had experience on the other end of a online class.
Oh, right.
Okay, mine was set up
You didn't
okay.
ask, but it says you brought it up.
Okay. But I understood how online can communicate things like things that are very text-based or something like art history that would fit in really nice to an online class, right? You'd have the visuals, you'd have, videos, and it would really fit in when it was just a lot of, in my mind, thinking of a talking head with some pictures and videos. That would fit in nice because you could really replicate an in-class experience. But I always think math is special. So I'll catch grief from some of my colleagues in the College of Science when I refer to math and then the other lesser sciences, which I mean is just a friendly dig. But I wasn't sure it would be good online. And I did, where is it? He listed all the things that things that I'm doing or did here at RIT. And the one that I'm really proud of is the Eisenhart Teaching Award. That, of all the things, I was very pleased with that. So teaching is very important to me. And I didn't want to just do a bad job just because it was going to be online. So I thought about, and I made a list of things that I was thinking about, pros and cons, and I was on the con side. I was thinking about all the reasons why it wouldn't work. And one of the ones that still comes up, I saw Kumar come in. Where did he get there? So I was talking to Carl. Carl is a very good teacher, colleague of mine, office beside, and we were talking about this talk, and one of his issues was the same as my issue, assessment. How do I know, and he brings up, how do I know it's my students writing the quiz? They don't bring in a ringer or something like that. That's something that some people are concerned about. There's also the idea that online classes seem to put more responsibility onto the student. It has to be more active. You can't just sit back and memorize what the guy's saying to you. Lack of instant feedback. In class, in theory, a student could put up their hand and get a question answered right away. They don't, but they could, right? It could happen. A lack of a classroom community. was something that I'd concerned myself with because, and this is the next point about the humor and the fun getting lost, I think that class is supposed to be fun. If it's not fun, you're taking the wrong class. If it's not fun, you shouldn't be here. Students and professors alike. I guess the biggest thing, and Gold again put me over the hurdle for this, it's a huge upfront investment. You got to have everything laid out for your whole semester ahead of time, what you're going to do when, because it's not like a face-to-face class where you can go in with notes and do some examples, and what you can just put on the board and fill a 50-minute lecture off the top of your head. You have to have all your stuff ready. Videos, assignments, things have to be thought out, the quizzes have to be made, and everything seems to take longer than I thought it would take. Or, I mean, I asked during the Gold program, how long does it take to make a 20-minute video? Because I looked at some of the things that other people had done ahead of me. And, they said, oh, it's like 40 minutes, 20-minute video. That's not true. I think it takes at least an hour to put a 20-minute video together, and then you're not happy with it because it could be better. So, but you still have as long as you save the raw footage, you can still make it better. But it's a huge upfront investment. It's less nimble because of that. You lay out all your classwork, you know what you're going to do each week, and then, when you're teaching a class and a student has a good question, and you want to take that and go off on a tangent with it because it applies to somebody's major or something like that, and you can't. It's difficult to do online because everything's already pre-planned. And then again, back to math being special, it's not just text and pictures and talking. There's something that needs to be communicated with the equations. So I'm going to dismiss a lot of these cons because, like assessment, let's get rid of more responsibility on the student. I put that as a con, but it's also a pro, right? For if you actually want the people to learn, it forces them to be more active. So I think that's both good and bad. I got rid of assessment because I want to talk about today on how to communicate the math part, and the assessment and the lack of feedback and the potential loss of classroom community. Those were things that are general in all online classes. And these things that I've got crossed out as problems, and I'm saying, they don't pertain exclusively to math, so I'm not going to talk about them. There are still answers for all of these that we explored in the Gold program, right? There's the discussion boards, which it's the weakest part of my course, actually, is the discussion and trying to build a community. That was the thing I had the most problem with. I'm running again this summer, the course being Math 261, Financial Topics in Financial Mathematics. And that's the place I had to put more work in because a community was not built. But the positives, can pause and think. So these are all the reasons that online classes they have an advantage over a face-to-face class. You can pause and think. During a real lecture, all the pauses are initiated by me. I do an example, I stop and ask, how does this sit with you guys? Does it make any sense? And then there's a pause, and the pause always feels like super long in your head, but if you actually timed it, it's only like 30 seconds, right? So they don't really have a time to get things together. With these videos, or with the online classes, they can pause it, think, they can repeat that section if they didn't catch it. They can repeat whole lectures if they're studying. So there's advantages that way. There's more potential for active learning. There has to be. But again, you can pause it, make them go do, or the instructions are halfway through this lecture, go and do this little quiz, or look at this assignment, or read this thing. You can set it up to be exactly, having the students do exactly what you want in order for them to learn the most efficiently, which you cannot do in a classroom face-to-face session. There's that idea of a flipped classroom, but again, you're always fitting into I got 50 minutes, or better if you get 75 minutes. And ideas in math are not broken down into these like 50-minute chunks. Sometimes for a proof, I need an hour to do it properly. Or else if I split it in the middle, then I have to have some cool down time telling them what we're going to do. And then when they show up the next day, could be like 4 days from now if it's a Tuesday, Thursday class, and I get them on Thursday and Tuesday. And I got to remind them where we're at, what we're doing. So it would be better if the lectures could be exactly as long as they're supposed to be. And with it online, I can make them exactly as long as they're supposed to be. Ideally, according to the Gold program, they were saying 20 minutes is a sort of a maximum amount of lecture time. I made videos that were sometimes longer than that. But you can make 10-minute ones, get an idea out, and then they can go and practice and learn it. I had down here a huge upfront investment, but that investment pays off. It's going to pay off this summer because when I reteach the class again, I've got a lot of stuff already made. I'm not starting from the beginning. I'm tweaking what I already have, trying to build on what worked and redo things that didn't work as well as I'd hoped. It is better when I'm trying to show something that has to do with computer modeling. So I do a lot of, in the financial math classes, I need to show some spreadsheets or doing something on MATLAB, and that means I bring up on the screen my Excel sheet, and I'm typing in formulas, and it's small, so I got to make it big, and some kids catch it and some kids don't. And it's nice because online, they can, again, pause it. They can replicate what I'm doing. They can open up another window and actually do what I'm doing. And most importantly for this computer modeling part of it, I get students of various levels of coding ability. Some of them have never done a spreadsheet, which is kind of weird, but they just get to university without ever doing a spreadsheet. And other ones are super good MATLAB coders, better than me. So I have to, in a face-to-face class, talk to everybody without boring those people that code much better than I do. This allows the student to go at his own pace with the computer modeling. And I use it also for the face-to-face class. These videos that I've made, if the topic shows up in another class, I can say, I've taken that video out of the online part, put it in my courses for the face-to-face class, and I can say, I've done an example. If you want to see another one, there it is. As I go through with this too, when I was looking for information on how to do an online class, and I would come to one of these things, people would talk about their experiences in the Gold program or other one of these seminar workshop things. I guess what I wanted the answers that I wanted were I would ask things like, how did you do that? What I really wanted to know was, how could I do that? So you don't feel you have to just sit here and not say anything, right? Just speak up. The talk is structured such that it's stretchable. It could be the excitement of me talking for 50 minutes, or it could be back and forth, which would be more exciting, I think.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes. Not now.
You were talking about 50 minutes. So you felt constrained to that? If it's a 50-minute class, all your stuff had to fit to that? I mean, did you ever feel like it could be less or more? Since, there's a little bit more freedom if they don't have to come in that exact time.
Yes, 50-minute.
You could add a little more if you wanted to.
50-minute classes are, you get less material out of three 50-minute face-to-face classes than you do in two 75-minute classes.
But I'm talking about all the online. Like if you put together, if it was all video, did you feel like you were constrained? I can't do any more than 50 minutes of video, or were you, whatever happened, let it fall where it falls?
You could just let it fall where it falls. We were told that. How did you phrase it about the total length of learning time was what we were looking for, right?
It's like the seat time during the week. How much time are students investing each week?
Right. So you didn't have to have every week 150 minutes of them watching videos. Them doing other things counted, and actually were probably more productive than just straight listening to 150 minutes of talking.
I mean, so I'm in engineering, and with our accreditation kind of stuff, we're concerned with contact hours. So I'm just curious, I don't even know how this plays out, if it's an online versus face-to-face, if that still is subject to the same kind of accountability, but I was just curious, just, I guess just because you set up classes to be 50 minutes doesn't mean you actually have 50 minutes of contact time. You're there for 50 minutes, doesn't mean they're there, whether they're physically there or not, right?
Right, well, for a 50-minute class, you waste 5 minutes at the beginning and 5 minutes at the end,
Even
right?
if they're checked out for 30 minutes too, is what I'm saying,
I should mention too, my colleague Michael Serenko has prepared a wonderful document that breaks down time on task in online courses, and I can send that out to everybody here at the conclusion of this event.
So that's a demonstration of every issue that you come up with is a pre-solved problem. They've got information on it. It does work. I mean, you said you didn't have a great experience in one, but it can be done.
The Institute publishes a credit hour, contact hour for online courses, courses, goes on a real estate's assessment compliance committee, and we got to look at that. And it's the same document used at some other institutes as well. So for every credit, so many credit hours in the class, we put some of that in discussion in some of the other areas to equal the requirements.
Yeah, basically, it's for one credit, it's 15 hours of classroom time, and then double that in homework. So that's 45 hours of learning time per credit, and 135 hours for a 3-credit course. So that's what you need to learn. You need to have that figure when you are designing an online course. So you divide that by the number of weeks, and you come up with the expected learning time for each week. And you try to ensure that your assignments don't go too far over that number.
I had a question. I came in a minute late. Is your course an asynchronous course, or do you have a live synchronous component to it where the students have?
The lectures, the videos are asynchronous, but I tried to do discussions. I didn't do like the Skype piece. One of the main, I was in Shanghai for half the time, so I'd have to get up in the middle of the night, or they would all have to get up.
Did you ever meet them then? Do they ever come to, like,
No.
so you never sit down and say, here's how this all works, you basically set something out?
No, that the boilerplate setup was given to us. It's standard, so that would be a ton of work to set up, but you don't have to.
Well, I guess in terms of the students, so there's never any like kickoff class that says, I'm going to explain how all this works, now you go off and do it, I don't see you again. You never had anything like that?
No, but some of the first assignments are set up such that they can see how things work, like a quiz that doesn't count for anything, or an assignment whose main purpose is so we can figure out how to upload the math part of it. I'll skip ahead to that if they're handing stuff in. I just did it with drop boxes, and there's, what is it, cam capture, cam scanner. So they could just take a picture with the mobile phone or cell phone, if you will, and then you got a PDF document of their homework. So that was one of the things too with math, right? How do you get homework? So this way they can get the homework to me. And an advantage of that, I actually liked grading on this a lot better than the actual paper grading. I might move over to the Dropbox solely for the face-to-face classes as well, because you could do your grading anywhere. You're not carrying around papers and losing stuff. You have records. You just read it through. There's a place to type comments. So this is what I made this yesterday.
Except I got all my X's on the X side and the Y's on the Y side.
This is what I didn't want,
Sometimes
where the kid would just see a video of me.
only half the stuff gets integrated. So I want to integrate the whole side.
That's me over there.
Integrate the Y side integrate the x side with respect to x. Somewhere there's a plus c, there's a trig there, so I'm going to take a second, slow down, and did I integrate that trig right? Meaning, did I get them missing a minus sign? No. The derivative of stuff that starts with c is negative, so the derivative of sine is close. I'm good.
So I think that's what I did not want. That was terrible to me, that you would go in and watch that sort of thing and try and learn. It would be way better to learn math by just sitting down with one of the actual good textbooks and just reading through. The textbook would do a better job than just watching a video of me. Although, if you were paying attention to the clip, when in lecture you always give little tidbits of the way you're thinking about the problem that a textbook skips over. So there is value in going to class. That's what I didn't want. What I did want was, I don't know if you guys are familiar with John Green, author. He makes these crash courses, or Numberphile. So there are these. First one's John Green, but he. Oh, and I. Okay. The sound quality's bad, but these are education. These are online videos, and I just turn the sound off because it's irritating. But I mean, people watch these for fun. So if you could get your level of video up to this level where people would, not watch them because it was part of class, but just because it's fun to watch. I would like to get to this level of production. This Numberphile is another. It's a YouTube channel where the guy does fun math things. Notice his way of presenting the math is he's just over the shoulder. He's got a partner filming, and he's just straight writing on a piece of paper. And let me skip forward to it. So the point being, just do it looking at the zeta function, but these are graphics that I could never draw in class. So you can get the pictures to be better. My graphics are still rougher than that. So what I didn't want, where I wanted to be, how I started then. Again, I want to talk about how I put the math into the videos, how I got the math to the students. And before I started, a colleague, Carol, she used a drawing pad, and she's got the assignment up here on one part of the screen, and she's going to write on, it's like it's a drawing pad that you write with a pen, a Qualcomm pad, and they've got the facilities right around the corner to do this, to make these videos. So I would book time here, and you could make these videos. So this was the first, or this is one of the ones that I looked at before to see how she was doing it. She's writing with a pen. Now, I think this is good because you're getting the experience of being in class. You're watching an example being done rather than just have a PDF with the thing completely finished. You're seeing how it's coming, and she could talk. What I didn't like about this one was, now this is just a clip, so it might happen earlier on in the video. I don't see her, so it's just a talking voice, right? I would like to at least see the professor for a minute. I don't need to see him. I don't need to see her for like the full 20 minutes. But I think in mine, I put myself at the beginning just so you could see it's a person. Then I went away because then you could hear me talking, and then come back if there's something, if there's a reason for me to be visible. So this is the one I made like it using that drawing pad. So I put myself, and I'm wearing the same sweater. That's done in the studio in the back. Now, where's my? I made notes because you don't want to watch the full 20 minutes. So I've already pre-typed some things in OneNote, and then I can draw on top of it. and this would be saved, and the kids can have access to this sort of thing. Where's my issue? You had different tabs in OneNote, and I can flip to another tab, and this is all pre-typed up. That's for speed, because they actually have this problem, and they can do the writing as well. And it's also the fact that my penmanship is really bad, so it's nice to have this stuff typed so that there's no reason to. All right. So that was my first thinking about it. And then, as I said, the online stuff is really good for showing how to work Excel or MATLAB. 4C.
So I looked at calls and puts in the last video. They're not the only options that are out.
Anyway, that's me talking. But you can see now that I don't have to do this in the studio. I've moved up to, that's just in my office. So I can make these videos anywhere using that Camtasia program, free for everybody. And they got me up to speed on how to use this. Something happens at 7 minutes. But you can see that I can put up pictures better than I can draw. They can see exactly what I type. Now I switch to Scientific Workplace, which is a math word processing type program. And this means that you don't have to suffer through my penmanship. Things can be put in and I can type, you can copy paste. So I'm finding that in the end, this was the best way for me to do actual math with it, was just to do the typing rather than the trying to write. And Scientific Workplace. And again, these can be saved as PDFs so the kids can have them at the end. And switching between file types. So when I was filming this or videotaping this at my desk, I could have multiple monitors open and have different files, so I could show an Excel sheet, move it over, have the Scientific Workplace move it over. If I needed some sort of a picture from Google Images or something, I could find it and put everything into one. So trying to make one program do everything didn't work out to be the best. It was switching between the different programs. And you can edit, so arbitrage. So now this I'm supposed to go to 8 minutes, right? 8 minutes. So I'm back on OneNote and trying the writing, because sometimes this is faster if I have to draw some pictures as I go. But the Scientific Workplace just gives you a better product, I think. But the point of this one was, we're talking about arbitrage and selling short. And selling short is a concept that students sometimes have a problem with, the idea of selling something you don't own. And one of the ways to talk about it is, oh yeah, you can do that and just leave it at that. But I would like to do some real examples of how a real life person can sell short. So you can call up examples online. I'm going to call up Amazon in a second here. And again, the investment is now made, and if I need to show this example again, I don't have to search through in class. This is already pre-filmed. So the idea of shorting something, people do this on Amazon all the time, those arbitrage profits. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal this summer about it. You know what I'm talking about? Does anybody eat spam? Just me? Okay. So if let's say you grew up in Hawaii and they've got like 40 different kinds of spam, and you really, really want the teriyaki spam and you can't buy it here, you would go on Amazon and order it. But the person that's sending you the spam doesn't have like crates of spam in his garage. You give him the money, he sells it to you first, and then he goes and buys it at the grocery store and mails it to you. He sells that spam short. We can sell Wegmans products short here because there's a lot of people that want Wegmans products that don't live near stores anymore. Okay, but the point of that video was I can switch from screen to screen, show some real life examples. I want them to use real data, so we can have them go into Yahoo Finance and download real numbers. Now I'm on, which is from week 6. But how to get the real numbers. So I can show them how to get through this. Other kids that have already had business classes don't need this part. They can fast forward through it. You can watch these videos on fast forward as well.
Yahoo Finance.
6, 20, 20. So how to get the data.
Just as an example. Option, have
Go to
codes that either
23.
look like that the stock goes up, we can model it. Here's our adjusted closes.
Again, showing them exactly how to do it. And if I tried to show this in class,
Let's just look at our own graph. That's what it looks like.
I would get a lot of some kids wanting to see some of these operations again. Oh, and after you watch them, I can put in some of these things to
What do we understand about it?
amend the lecture.
That we understand about it.
Because, you know, sometimes you have that pense d'escalier, right? You leave in the classroom and you go, oh, I should have told him this at that moment. I can go back in and put those things
May 4th
in.
at 107, and I had a return of minus point equal to times a random return. These returns here.
So I went through these and I'm trying to like pick out things that are,
Standard deviation of
so again,
This
I didn't,
sum of 12
I wanted to reference the book, and as they do it in the book, they're talking about like adding up 12 uniformly distributed random numbers minus 6 to be approximately normally distributed. So I want to connect it to their textbook, whereas if I'm using the Excel command, it's the rand.
There. These are ends. How many ends? 1, 2, that. There's like a dozen ends here, and every time I reload the page,
Also with these, I think it's important that class be fun, and that means there has to be some bit of humor in it. But the humor is very difficult to translate online. So, I mean, you can't have sort of a back and forth with the student. There isn't that immediate feedback. So you got to figure out something else. I guess it's unintentional. Sometimes there's a comment or something that comes up which my children think are funny. So that might count as humor. But you can put in some of the other observations with the background. So now I'm into the full scientific workplace.
So we're going to end up looking for
And this would be awful handwritten in a real class.
This option might be a class
Because, I mean, the D's are important that they be the funny partial differential D's. And I can copy and paste things. A shout out to Scientific Workplace. It makes a,
value of the call option, and it's dependent on 2 independent variables. The stock.
it makes a live document. So you can highlight equations and just click graph and it'll produce the graph for me. I can copy and paste and simplify things. And again, in the end, the student will have all of this pre-typed out. But saying that it takes more than 40 minutes to make a 20-minute video, all of this has to be planned out ahead of time. What you're going to do, where, and how you're going to type it out. So, well, you can edit some things if you make an error. one of the things I found helpful was to have a lot of stuff pre-typed down further down the document and then copy paste, and I can edit that out, or you don't see me reaching over here highlighting and pasting it in, but it just appears. Again, conscious of the fact that if too many things just appear, then you're going to lose what's going on. So this is using the scientific workplace ended up being, I think this is the best presentation of this kind of a material. Better than the pad. What would be, I don't know how to do this, but it would be nice if I could have this and then the pad somehow overlaid on it, that I could write on this, so I could have the typing and the writing would be the really nice thing. But I didn't know how to do that, or if it could be done. So you can see that things start to get really complicated. They're going to get simple in a minute. We're building Black-Scholes equation here. But they'll have all the steps. Now you might say, if you have your textbook, it shows you that in there. Well, a textbook doesn't, right? A textbook always says things like, it is easily seen, or, you know, after some algebra, which means like after a page of algebra. So we can actually have the steps in here, and they can see the derivations. Anything else exciting? Nope. All right. So if I wanted to make a new one now, that's my starting MO, would be to have it all typed up in Scientific Workplace, then record the screen with me. Again, the picture of me there is just so that there's it's not just a talking voice, there's somebody there doing it. Talked about the videos a lot. I thought that was, for me, the most important thing was making the videos, because that was the best way to communicate the information above the, in addition to the textbook and notes and sort of thing. But as far as assessment goes, we talked about the Dropbox. You can have these quizzes in. Now, I learned a lot about my courses as well. Some of you are probably familiar with this, so I'm just telling you what you already know. But you can make these quiz questions that they go through. It automatically dumps their answers into so grades it and dumps it into the grade book, so that's nice. Now you might worry about, if you have quiz questions, how does, everyone gets the same quiz questions? No. I can code in, or you can code in a question such that it randomly chooses what year annuity and updates the answer, so everybody gets a different question. So every week they would have to do, after the readings, they were supposed to do, it's like usually 4 or 5 questions. That's another thing that I can do this year as I re-go through the course. I can put more quiz questions in, because these they took a long time to make. They didn't take that long to do the questions, so they should be really quick, simple. If you read the thing, a little calculation, you get the right answer. So it shouldn't take them that long. If they didn't get the right answer, my hope was that it would be a diagnostic. It would point out that this would be a section you need to read over again, or send me an email to ask me about it. And finally, the idea of these investments pay off in a face-to-face class. One of the biggest or most important ideas in this financial math class, or even the graduate financial math class, is the idea of delta hedging. And delta hedging is a process where you rebalance your portfolio, delta hedge, every day. But in order to teach it, usually what happens is you say, all right, here are the stock prices for the last 5 days. And then we go through and we delta hedge each day. But it's presented as if I know the stock prices of all 5 days before I even purchase or short the stock. What kept getting lost was the fact that I only have a piece of information. I need to balance my portfolio, then wait the next day or next time step happens, and then revisit and rebalance. The time of the date changes, the time changes, and the stock price changes. So kids were not catching that. So oh, I forgot the bond. So making something that, like, now I've only showing them the actual stock prices if I go to 1620. I want to make it really obvious that a day has gone by. So I made this video for the online class, but I've also put it up in my other classes so that they could see it. This is done in the OneNote. There isn't that many equations. These I typed in Scientific Workplace, made it a PDF, and it's just sitting in the background. These are just for reference, so that they could actually take their numbers. We're on Tuesday now. We bought the stock on Monday. And they can calculate and go along with me, rebalancing their portfolio, trying to make sure that they know where all the pieces are coming from. So I'm trying to keep track of the things. I've shorted about half a stock. I've invested my money overnight at 8% interest. And there. Now it's nighttime. So I'm like trying to make sure that the kids know that that information is over, the market's over, gone to bed, day is starting. Then we get up in the morning, and then the whole thing's going to start. Put this in to show about the investment paying off in your face-to-face classes. I found making these videos like mad fun. This one I was making I was in the living room, my kids are off in the dining room doing stuff, and they could hear me giggling to myself because of making these transitions and going in. And I don't know if did anybody catch the Back to the Future reference there? No. It didn't have the sound off. But anyway, it's from the Back to the Future movies. So you could take clips from YouTube and put them in, and there's some things that are just funny to me and only I saw, but I had a good time making the movies. As a final example of that, then I'll show you. The bond lesson starts out. I mean, obvious. But then you can have things like this talk about what's strips on a bond. And if I was lecturing about this, there'd be some arm waving and I would describe. I guess I could have this picture to bring up, but you just sort of skip it when you're doing a face-to-face lecture because it's not important. But in an online, it's okay to do that extra investment because it's going to pay off over and over again. Now, questions, discussion, things you'd like to know. Tim?
How many students typically take this type of online class? I'm curious in your class.
Well, I've only done it once, so I have a sample of one, and there was 7 kids. But there will be more this summer because it wasn't offered in the school year, so I'm hoping some pent-up demand.
I don't know if you're looking at me or not.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So you mentioned before, you talked about discussion groups related to the online classes. Did you have one in here? What sort of things did they discuss?
Yeah, so I had, let's go back here. I tried to have questions every week that would pertain to the topic. And this is the weak part of the course here. So I'm trying to get some discussion going by asking these open-ended questions. And then hopefully they would answer the question to me, but then another student would respond to one student. And that didn't happen. It was a lot of them talking just to me. So I didn't do a good job on this.
So what were you trying to achieve, though?
Like a chat room feel to it.
But why?
To build a community and have kids come up with their own ideas. There are people from, they weren't all like in Rochester. There was people from, that were living all over the place, all over the world.
So I guess I've always wondered, is there a demand for that? I mean, do we really know students want that? From my experience in online classes and others, and granted they're all colleagues of my age, I don't care so much. You know, and a lot of it was more about if I wanted any community or connection, it was because I had things I wanted to ask of the instructor. It's not that I wanted to necessarily or had to connect with anyone else in the class. So I'm not trying to say that's good or bad. I'm just asking. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, are students asking for that? Is that what they want? Is that really what? Because I get sort of the impression, because I've tried to use discussion groups too, and they mostly just see it as a hassle, something they got to do, and they don't want to do it.
Right, so I didn't want to grade it such that you get one tick for every time you made a comment, because that's the way it was graded when I took that online class. And I guess I did it myself too, right? It's like 30 seconds to midnight. I got to say something. That's a great idea. I agree, right? And then tick. It's.
And you know, this being a technical class, and that's why I teach technical classes too. I get it if it's something where you're in a political science class and you want to get discourse about that. But I've often said, well, we don't sit around and debate Newton's laws, right? It's not like you can decide you don't like them. So what's there to discuss? You know?
Well, like I've got down here, ideas to bring from the real world. This actually, I just picked this at random, but this was the one where I actually did get some good feedback from the kids. So things like buying extended warranty, right? When you buy an extended warranty, you're buying an option sort of on it. So people thinking about insurance and things that they would actually do. I wanted to relate the financial products to things that real people buy rather than hedge fund people buy.
I guess maybe that's kind of where it's, so that's a different purpose than them just wanting to have community with each other in a sense, right? You want them to individually connect to that idea, not necessarily to each other, because that's what you just said, that you wanted them to bring an example.
But when you're in a classroom, there's a community, right? There's usually a couple little cliques that sit around. We did put in, there's we call it a water cooler, which was supposed to be for them just to discuss stuff. And I could read that. Maybe in the next time there should be something that they can discuss stuff that I don't look at, like things you would want to talk to each other about, but you wouldn't want me to look at. I don't know. Sorry, you had a hand up.
I think for this question, it's going to depend on the audience in the class. So I'm with the online MBA program here at the College of Business. We've got executive level people in here. Half of them come to these MBA programs because they want the opportunity to engage with other people in the class and share common issues and so forth. But I think one of the things we do to ensure a robust and rigorous discussion is we have a rubric. And the rubric isn't just so you get a check for doing this. The rubric is the quality of your discussion, to extend the conversation, to provoke some engagement with other people. And I don't know how you would do that with Newton's law, but so it may depend, I think, a little bit on.
Well, that's kind of the question I'm asking. I mean, you're getting that because you designed
I have
to
a
get
profile,
that,
yes.
right? It doesn't mean they want that. It doesn't mean that you didn't require it. They would initiate that on their own. You know what I mean? That's all I'm asking.
This group,
I'm not saying it's
this
bad.
group, I think, does because we know that executive MBA students, peer engagement is a real high attraction component of why they go to the MBA programs as opposed to other programs. But I can see where some people may not find that useful.
Do you have a plan for writing the exams, the final exams? How do you work on that one?
So the final exams are by necessity take-home exams. But that wasn't a big change from the way I taught this in face-to-face. Because they need to download real financial data and they need to use spreadsheets and code things, I gave them a take-home exam in the face-to-face class as well. So that idea originally of assessment, how do I know that they're doing their work, I know as well as in the face-to-face exam. Kumar, you had a question too before I...
Going back to the previous comments, whether you include the discussion as a part of your assessment or not, the very open nature of the class itself will promote discussion among themselves. They may not put everything on the mic courses, but I'm sure that many of them, in the business example for instance, they might be communicating with themselves, talk about their experiences. Or rather than keeping it as an assessment component, you can say, dump your ideas in here. This is like water cooler idea. Let's just talk about it. Or here's the problem. This is the way I solved it. Can you think of an extension? Or do you find a hole in the argument? So general discussions rather than putting something for a certain point or not.
Right, and there are, I mean, you talk about Newton's laws, there are all of these, any model is wrong, so you've got the assumptions. We talk about the assumptions of these models. Every time I say an assumption for Black-Scholes, you have to follow it up with, of course that's not true, but it's close enough and we move on, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm not trying to find fault, but I do think that at some point, when does really putting in additional effort, even if some kind of assessment, some kind of rubric on a discussion group in order to initiate community, how do you know that adds to the success of your course and not subtract from it? And what I'm hearing in terms of a cohesive community, it should be something, I mean, that's bigger than the course. If that's something of a desire, why isn't there this water cooler that exists in and of itself? Why is it only, I mean, because then if it was a good thing, they leave the course, it's gone. So then what happens to it? If it's something that is cohesive like that, why isn't it something outside of the course? It doesn't seem like it has to be a part of the course at all, per se. And maybe even just some element, how does it directly connect to what you're trying to do? I mean, and that's what I'm saying, I guess, if it
And I have to,
Playing devil's
it's
advocate.
also going to be dependent on the student, right? When I was a student in an online course, to be honest, just like in a face-to-face course, when I take a face-to-face course, I like to sit off in the corner, I like to quietly listen, and I don't like to interact or talk to anybody. So the requirement to contribute, I was motivated by the greatest incentive as well. So if I had something intelligent to say, I would say it to myself or my wife or something, right? But I wouldn't pitch in the class like that. So I mean, I agree with you. But then there's other kids that it's important for, I think. I mean, we all have those. Last semester I had a kid, and he's always challenging assumptions and discussion about things, relating it to his life. So it was important for him. It wouldn't be important for me as a student. Kumar, you had?
One possible advantage is it's a feedback to you too as an instructor, because you get to understand what the students are getting out of your lectures. If there is misunderstanding, it gives you a chance to clean it up right away.
Right. So I did get discussions directed at me, and then it was replied back in an open forum so everyone could see the answer. Because you're right, if one person misunderstood, then half of them didn't catch it.
I think to your point about gold earlier, for a quick plug there again, having that conversation as to the fitness for purpose, what is it that you're trying to design, what kind of outputs you're looking for from your students, having that kind of a conversation with your cohort, with peers and with instructional designers, it might determine that discussions aren't right for you at all. But at least have that conversation and bounce those ideas around. I know that's one thing you got out of that.
That was another advantage of the Gold 2, is because it made me think about what I was doing and why I would put a class together the way I did in the first place. Whereas before that, not like I didn't put any thought into it, but I didn't have a structured plan and I didn't think everything through clearly. It just worked out well the way I did it. But you have to plan everything ahead of time, so you have to put thought into why you're doing what you're doing.
You said before you thought that the discussions weren't, that you could improve upon them, but if your goal of the discussion was to really just get more of a one-way feedback from the students to gauge where they're at, you did achieve that. If your goal is to get them to talk to each other, you didn't achieve that. But that's kind of where I'm going with that. Which did you really want?
I think if there was some discussion amongst themselves, it would be more fun for them and for me, right? Instead of just, answering a question, I misunderstood this, I'm referring to this part and it's this equation, oh, you misunderstood, it was, dt, not dx or something like that. That's not as much fun as talking about, is an extended warranty really like a put option? Right? Those are fun things to think about.
You think they're fun.
Okay, but I mean, it's supposed to be fun for me too, or I could just not teach in the summer, right?
We have time for one last question.
Pick me.
Saw a hand up.
Yeah.
As an Eisenhower, did you feel that the experience you created for your students in that class is comparable in terms of the overall learning experience as it would have been in a face-to-face setting? That's part one of the question. Part two, did you have any students sitting in that class with you online that have sat classes with you face-to-face? And was there any discernible difference in their perception of your performance?
So some parts were as good and some parts were not as good as a face-to-face. So I'm not done yet. I don't, I mean, it's only the first time I did it, so it's not,
Halfway up the learning curve.
I don't know if you know that far, but there's things that could be much, much better. There was at least one student that I had signed up in, I think I had him in calculus or something a while ago. And I don't know what his experience, like,
Be interesting to ask that question.
yeah, and the,
Feedback.
yeah, the feedback, that's another place that I think I could do better, is getting some feedback from the students as we go. That was a suggestion that you guys had, right? You're supposed to do a sort of almost a mid-term evaluation feedback from the kids. I'm going to put that in next time.
Please join me in thanking Bernie Brooks. A lively discussion.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out again.